What if I told you that petty thief in the early 1900s Stockholm changed Sweden's criminal justice system forever? Not because he fought to reform the justice system, but because he committed a murder so gruesome that the country imported a guillotine from France just for his execution. His savage killing of a cashier shocked the nation, but his brutal death ignited a debate about the state's power over life and death. A debate that eventually led to the end of the death penalty in Sweden. This is the story of Alfred Ander, the last man to be executed in Sweden. So who was Alfred Ander? He was born on November 27, 1873, in a village of Historiska in Stockholm, the son of a former ship captain. Alfred was a person who thought that everyone and everything was against him. His life was marked by petty crimes and financial desperation, which in 1910 led to a shocking act that would seal his fate forever. Recently released from Vecteezy prison, Alfred had been unable to find steady employment. Living with his father on the island of Vaxholm only temporarily provided a roof over his head, but not much more. He wanted to take revenge on life. So on the afternoon of January 4, 1910, desperate for money, Alfred decided to venture into Stockholm, hoping to borrow money from old friends and collect some old debt. The journey to Stockholm on that cold January day was full of uncertainty. Alfred's first stop was to the Hotel Temperance, where he previously had stayed in 1909. The last time he were there, he skipped out on the bill. Yet, confidently, he checked into the hotel, retrieved a suitcase he left behind 1 year earlier, and set out into the city with a singular purpose: to successfully come back home with some money. His primary goal was to find a man named Carl August Johansson, an old friend who allegedly owed him over 150 kroner and a lottery ticket. But Johansson was nowhere to be found, and it's uncertain if he ever existed at all. Anders' quest for money took him to various locations in Stockholm. Jurell's exchange office at the Mantorgsgatan 2. On that afternoon of January 4th, 1910, Alfred entered the office, looked around, and purchased a drawing list for 5 cents before leaving. Later that evening, 2 men were standing outside the exchange office and looking to the display window when an unknown man came up and stood next to them. He stood there silently for several minutes before speaking up and asking them if they might know the value of one of the gold coins in the display window. He also asked, quote, "Does the young lady in the shop always work here alone?" unquote. They gave the man the answer he desperately wanted, and then he said, quote, "Goodbye," unquote, and swiftly went away. Alfred was also seen at the cafe Sista in the Crown Prince stable at Tegelbacken. There he retrieved a bestman, a type of portable scale, from a female acquaintance. According to Alfred, he was merely collecting it for an unknown man he had met before Christmas. Returning to his hotel, Alfred was observed by the hotel staff. He ordered tea, which was delivered by the maid Elsa Sofia Jansson. She noticed his, quote, "calm demeanor" as he read the newspaper, seemingly untroubled by the dire strait he found himself in, unquote. Yet beneath his calm facade, a plan was forming. The morning of January 5th began normal enough. Alfred ordered breakfast, but scarcely touched it. Around 8 or 9 o'clock, Elsa Sofia Jansson saw that he hurriedly left the hotel, carrying a long, narrow package wrapped in brown paper. It looked like he was hiding it from her sight. This was the package that would soon reveal its deadly content. Alfred made his way back to Järrel's exchange office. Earlier, around 7:30, the maid Maria Louisa Jansson had unlocked the door and begun her cleaning routine. As she finished, Alfred entered the office. Maria told Alfred that, quote, the office wasn't open yet and he should return at 9, unquote. Without a word, he left, went around the corner and waited for the time to pass. Shortly thereafter, the cashier, Anna Victoria Hellsten, known as Tora, arrived for work. Tora, a well-liked 24-year-old, had been employed at the exchange office for 5 years. She was appreciated both by the customers and the owner, the widow Järrel. The maid stayed on the premise until just after 9:30. Before she left, she heard a man come in and ask Tora Hellsten about something. But Maria Louisa Jansson was cleaning behind a screen and never saw the visitor clearly. She only saw him from the behind as the man left, but she got the feeling it was the same man who had come into the office earlier in the morning. When Maria Louisa Jansson left the exchange office, she noted the time on the clock in the hall. It was 25 minutes to 10. On her way to another cleaning job in town, she stopped at Hotel Rydberg for a moment. She stood there for a while, looking at the clock at the Royal Opera House. It showed 20 to 10. If Maria Louisa Jansson had stayed at the exchange office for a few more minutes, she would have witnessed the brutal murder of Tora Hellsten, or she might have scared away the killer by her presence. This thought haunted her for the rest of her life. Moments after Maria's departure, Alfred Ander re-entered Järrel's exchange office. With a calculated brutality, he struck Tora Hellsten on the head with the bestman, the scale. The force of the blow shattered her skull, and the brain matter was pouring out from the open skull wound. Alfred needed to skip over the big pool of blood that was forming around her body as he ransacked the office, searching for money and valuables. His action was desperate, and as the chaos unfolded, the clock continued to tick, marking the beginning of the end for Alfred Ander. The brutal murder of Tora Hellsten was quickly discovered when a coal delivery man, Hugo Bernhard Johansson, arrived at the exchange office 30 minutes after with a sack of coal. The door was slightly open, so he stepped inside on the floor behind the counter and found the cashier, Tora Hellsten, unconscious in a pool of blood. She was motionless and silent. The first policeman on the scene quickly confirmed that Tora Hellsten was alive, but breathing weakly. He also noticed that the door to the exchange office safe was ajar, and the safe was empty. Together with his colleague, they turned Tora Hellsten over, at which point she made a faint sound. One of the policemen began artificial respiration by pressing on her chest, while the other called for an ambulance and requested reinforcement from the police station. The ambulance took Tora to Seraphim Hospital. There, the doctor tried to get Tora to say something about what happened to her, but to no avail. She was taken to an operation room but died before the surgery could begin. After examining Tora's skull, they left an autopsy report with these notes. Quote, a roughly 7 cm long wound with blunt edges on her head. At the bottom of the wound, the skull was found to be cracked along its entire length. Just to the left of this wound was another one, 3 centimeters long, with blunt edges, which also penetrated to the brain. Additionally, there were several swellings and aberrations on her head. Unquote. At the Tempress Hotel, the staff noticed the return of their guest in room 35, Alfred Ander. When roommate Annie Eriksson was sent to collect the payment, she received the payment in cash and noticed foreign-looking banknotes on the table. Alfred Ander informed the staff that he would return later to collect his suitcase, as he planned to take a steamboat to Vaxholm. On his way out, the elevator operator David Julius Johansson recognized Ander from previous visits. He tipped Johansson a krona with a simple quote, "Here you go," unquote, and then disappeared. Meanwhile, the police detective were on the scene at the exchange office. Detective Gustav Lidberg. The evening newspaper had already printed out the news about the robbery and the murder, so the tips had already begun pouring in to Detective Police Chief J.R. Frick. That evening, the portier Richard Larsson from the Temperance Hotel contacted the police. He described the strange behavior of their guest in room 35, who had abruptly left the hotel. When Larsson mentioned the suitcase left behind, Frick and his team rushed to investigate. When the detective opened up the suitcase, they met with a shocking surprise. Inside were banknotes and coins, mostly foreign, along with other valuables, a handbag and a purse marked with the name Tora Hellsten. Among the items were also bloody newspaper sheet, likely used to wipe the blood off his hand. They also mentioned that Ander had said that he would take the boat to Vaxholm at 3:10 this afternoon. The pieces were coming together. The bloody money, the identification papers, and the eyewitness account all pointed unmistakable to Alfred Ander. After learning that the now wanted Alfred Ander had likely traveled towards Vaxholm, Detective Frick and his team began their search. They questioned crew members on the Vaxholm company's boats. The first mate of the Vaxholm one recognized Ander from childhood and confirmed that Ander and a woman disembarked at Karlsund at 1510 boat to Vaxholm. By the evening of Thursday, January 5, 1910, the last boat to Vaxholm had departed. Detective Frick, 2 police officers and 8 detectives was set for Karlsund, with Captain Gustafsson at the helm. They arrived at Karlsund around 11 o'clock in the night. The officer disembarked and began searching for Captain Andersson's cottage. The darkness and the ice made the journey difficult, but eventually the police found the house. They all surrounded the building, and Detective Frick pounded on the door. Anders' father opened it, and all the policemen stormed in. Alfred Ander was arrested without much drama. He was still in bed with his wife when the police burst in. A loaded rifle was leaned against the wall in the bedroom, but Ander didn't have the chance to reach for it. Alfred Ander was in custody. The swift apprehension of Ander was a testament of the police force. Anders' final hours was spent in the cold, dark confines of Långholmen prison. The gravity of his crimes and the evidence against him led to a swift sentencing, the death penalty. As Alfred awaited his execution, the gravity of his situation was setting in. The death sentence was a rare thing in Sweden by this time. On November 23, 1910, as dawn broke over Stockholm, the preparation for the execution were in progress. Sweden had traditionally used an executioner wielding an axe before, a role filled by the same man for many years. However, as the executioner aged, concerns arose about his ability to carry out the task swiftly and humanely. Thus, the authorities decided to adopt a more, quote, modern and efficient method, unquote, the guillotine, and they imported it from France. This will be the first and only time the device was used in Sweden. As the first light broke that November morning, Alfred Ander was led from his cell to the execution chamber. Witness described his demeanor as calm, perhaps resigned to his fate. Alfred was placed beneath the blade as his final moment was ticking away. At exactly 8:06 a.m., the blade was released, swiftly ending Alfred Ander's life. His head fell into the basket below, a stark statement to the ultimate price of his crime. And the story of Alfred Ander is one of crime and pursuit and justice. It began with a brutal murder, and it ended as the last person to be executed in Sweden. His death changed Sweden forever.